Hello and welcome back to Chasing Excellence, a show about chasing what truly matters. My name is Patrick Cummins. As always, I'm here with Ben Bergeron. How are you, sir?
I'm doing it. Doing it.
It's good to see you. Thanks everybody out there for joining us. We're going to talk today about a term I came across recently called dopamine culture. We're going to talk about what it means and why it's important to understand what it is and the risks that it brings, especially as it relates to the 5 factors. Before we get into that, this has been, you and I, the first time we've gotten together since the CrossFit Games. A lot of folks will know what happened at the CrossFit Games, the tragedy that occurred on the first day of the CrossFit Games. This episode's not going to come out probably for almost close to 2 weeks since, but we did want to, because this is the first time you and I got together, we did want to acknowledge it. We didn't want to skip over it. We didn't want to pretend it didn't happen. Again, we just want to acknowledge the tragedy, the loss, the challenge, the difficulty that the entire community is going through, and do whatever we can to support Lazar's family, his friends, and the broader community.
Yeah, it's unprecedented, and it's tragic, and it's terrible, and it's confusing, and no one knows how to navigate this the right way. It's one of those things that, I was down there. Cole was obviously competing, and you run the emotional spectrum and roller coaster where every hour, it's even quicker than that. It's like every 20 minutes you have this new crazy rush of emotions, from confusion to like just utter sadness and depression. When I got back, went out to dinner with my wife and just started crying at the restaurant table. To just this feeling of complete emptiness and lethargy to, being pissed off and angry. Mm-hmm. And I think I'd rather take a little bit of space and time to let the dust settle a little bit, let more information come out about this. If things feel right, then we'll do something more at length. But I appreciate you not just brushing over this and, this did happen. This is something that's not going to go away. And I hope that the conversations keep going in terms of what this means for the future of our sport.
Agreed. So 2 things. One, like Ben just said, if we feel like we've got something we're saying, we will dedicate some time and space for that. And 2, I'll put in the show notes again, just like we did in the episode right after it happened, we'll put the GoFundMe for Lazar's family. So again, if you haven't yet, and you can, certainly any little bit will help. Okay. We're going to talk about something, again, I mentioned this at the top, a term called dopamine culture. And it was coined by a writer named Ted Gioia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But he writes a Substack, a website called honest-broker.com. And he is primarily a music writer. And he wrote this, I think he called it the state of the culture. And it was primarily focused on art and artists and writers and creators, and the uphill battle that we face in doing what we do or doing what they do in the face of kind of overwhelming odds at this point. And the argument he's making is, I think, a really powerful one once you see it. And the argument is that we're moving from what might be called a slow culture into a dopamine culture. And he's got this graphic, and I'll link to this article so folks can read it and see it. But he's got this, he calls it the rise of dopamine culture. And I'll put this out, and then we can kind of figure out where we want to talk about this. But I think this visual is the one that really, when you see it, this is the one that really sticks out at you. And so this is a bit of a chart. So on the left of the chart, he says he's got slow traditional culture. In the middle of the chart is fast modern culture. And all the way to the right is dopamine culture. And then he broke it down by a couple different categories. And I'll just do a couple as examples. But he's got athletics. Slow traditional culture is to play a sport. Fast modern culture is to watch a sport. And dopamine culture is to gamble on a sport. Music. Slow traditional culture is albums. Fast modern culture is tracks. Dopamine culture is TikToks. Relationships. Slow traditional culture is courtship and marriage. Fast modern culture is sexual freedom. And dopamine culture is swipe on an app. And there's a handful more, but I think you get a decent sense of it. So I think this is the thing that stuck out to me. This is the thing that stuck out to you. Let's just start there and just talk to me a little bit about this concept of dopamine culture. What do you think about, what did you think about when I sent you this article?
Man, I hope that everybody listening actually, I've listened to podcasts and people talk about show notes and there's links, and I've never once read the show notes or clicked on something. I almost feel like we should almost read the article, but it would do a disservice because the imagery is so good.
Agreed.
That I really recommend. When you sent it to me, I saw the title. I kind of did an eye roll thing. I was like, this happened to me a few times where it's like, I know that topic, right? It's kind of the same thing I do with like Comfort Crisis, which is one of our book clubs. It's like, I know what that is. I know what that is. And I read it and it's like, oh, damn, this runs way deeper. It's way more prevalent. And I'm affected by this, which is, I always love those call outs when you have those. To me, those are transformative moments in your life where you go, it's not, see all of you guys over there that have this thing going on and I can talk to you about, it's like, no, this is affecting me. Much like Comfort Crisis. Like there's plenty of things in the Comfort Crisis I was like, yep, I am for sure a victim of that.
Yeah.
And in this case, yeah, for sure. Like that idea of slow versus modern versus dopamine or fast, I can't help but see it so much in my kids. I see it in myself for sure, because I'll sit on the couch now and try to watch a movie, and there's this thing in my pocket that I want to pull out and I want to like scroll. It's so weird. And I think that one of his other frameworks, which resonated so well with me, is he has this model where the conflicting two things before used to be art and entertainment. Art, like, are you trying to make something beautiful that speaks to you, or are you trying to make something that's going to be really popular? Right? I think of like an indie film that's going to get no critical acclaim, but the people that are part of it are like so proud of it and they think it's so amazing. And, all of the people that know art really well go like, that's amazing.
Yep.
But no one's going to go see it because it's not Titanic. It's not Avatar. Titanic and Avatar are entertainment, right? It's there for the masses. It's the same thing with music. Like are you pop or are you more of like a cult classic type thing? And that's the thing that's plagued society for, eons, like in a long time. And then only recently has that shifted to where it's not art versus entertainment. And he even says in his article, it might be like entertainment might have actually even started to swallow up and eaten art, because you can make so much more money and there's so much more interest in entertainment over art. Well, his contention is that even entertainment now is getting swallowed. And he points out to a lot of facts that support this. With Disney and Paramount and these huge movie production companies are basically shutting down because no one's watching even TV and movies anymore. Everyone's going for this distraction, this quick little hit of dopamine. And what they've actually done is gone even one step farther than that. It's not about the distraction thing. It's about creating an addictive model. And just like the drug cartels, and this is like, now that we get on, like, this is where we get to like two old guys in their 40s complaining about the young kids on social media and spending too much time on their phones. And you and I have both had plenty of conversations about this, but this article is really, it gives a lot of power to that punch in a big, big way. Because much like the drug cartels tried to fuel addiction, by putting drugs out in the streets and getting the next person hooked, those were like, whatever it was, the Colombians or the, whatever the families that those Netflix shows have been made about. And those families made, $100 million. They were like crazy, crazy wealthy. Well, the addiction industry now is measured in the hundreds of billions. It is the biggest companies that have ever exist because of the addiction economy. They didn't start off that way. I also want to give Facebook didn't start off as this way to get people addicted, and Instagram was the subset of that, and TikTok was the birth child of that, and somewhere in the middle fell Twitter. But Facebook started as a way of you sharing what's going on in your life and connecting with people. So I don't blame Zuckerberg or anybody else that started one of these companies, but the snowball has been sent down the hill, and it's gotten so big that no one can stop this avalanche at this point. And the avalanche is so powerful that it's changing humanity. And that's not really an overstatement. Is we now have this generation and generation plus that are addicts. And we started sharing these conversations a little bit, and we have a friend. This is crazy. So we have a friend who has 5 children. And those children, so I'll let you take a guess. What do you think is the craziest number? 5 children under the age of what?
Oh gosh, under 12.
Under 4.
Wait, what?
Twins.
Oh, twins. I've always forgotten
Then
about those twins.
then a single, and then a oopsie twins.
Oh gosh, oopsie twins.
Oopsie twins after already having 3. 5 under the age of 4. Goodness. One of their kids was having some issues, whether it's behavioral or learning, whatever it was. Took him to a therapist, and the therapist was like, take away their screens. Like, have them stop doing screens. It sounds like such an obvious answer. But they obviously can't take away from one kid, so they took away for all 5 kids. Now, they're not under 4 now. They're under 5 now, but they're older. But it solved it. It solved it. And it's like this thing, and I see with my kids, what they do is they no longer sit down and watch a show. They no longer sit down and watch a movie. What they're doing is this, it's not even entertainment. This is the crazy part. They are not entertained. They're not, it's like they just swipe, and then within 6 seconds, it's swipe, and within 6 seconds, it's swipe, and it's what they are not entertained, not the way we sit down and watch Star Wars, not the way we sit down and watch The Wedding Planner, such weird references. But the way that's an addict would, in terms of like, I need to pull the next lever on the slot machine. I need to pull that again. To the point where they are no longer enjoying the thing. They can't not pull it again. And once you get once you see in color for the first time, and you get this kind of like veil pulled away, that it's like, it's not art and entertainment. It's this addiction. They're creating a product. They're creating a culture that's just set up for addiction, not entertainment. And then I start to measure it on myself, and I can feel it. I can feel it. It's like I'm addicted to it. And now I only go on, I went back and looked. I do social media for somewhere around 30 minutes a day. You can check on your phone. But even at 30 minutes, I know I'm not staying on it because I'm entertained. I'm doing it because I feel the urge to swipe down. It's this urge to swipe down. If you think about how much money the drug cartels put into make sure that they could defend their turf and make sure that they could get the product and get the customers, how much effort they put into that. This is such a magnitude bigger than what they were doing in terms of industry. They have done such a phenomenal job of hacking the brain. I don't think has ever been seen before. I shouldn't say that. Drugs and alcohol do it, and gambling does it. But they've never done it on a mass scale like this. And I think this is where two old guys on their soapbox sitting in their rocking chairs on the porch, but I think it's a big deal. I really do. And let me ask you, when you read the article, let me just flip the question back to you. What was the thing that stuck out, resonated when you thought about it 3 days later? What's the things that you thought about?
Yeah, this is something that I think if folks are paying close attention to the conversations we've been having recently, this is something that's been on my mind for a while. It's actually been on my mind for a long time. And it goes all the way back to attention and owning your attention and the power of owning your attention, which is, for whatever reason, something I've just got stuck in my head for the last 5 to 8 years as being something that's really powerful and useful to think about and to look for. And so I think when I came across this specific article, what I was thinking about was the comfort crisis, which we were in the midst of reading. I was thinking about even just the small conversation we had about running or rucking without something in our ears, right? We had Mark England on a couple weeks ago to talk about silence and solitude, because this has been on my mind. So this was one of those things where I saw it a couple times before I really read it. And because I've been thinking about it a lot, it started to resonate quite a bit. And I think, to bring it maybe to comfort crisis a little bit, this won't be an official book club, but we're in the midst of that as a book club. And one of the things in the midst of the conversations that we're having there is something that I put together. And I actually want to bring this up. And I think this is a good space for it, because you have a little response that might kind of bring our conversations towards a bit of action here. But I wrote this in our collective conversation around comfort. And I think it fits into this conversation that we're having today, which is, and this is what I wrote. It said, it struck me that the case could be made for comfort being an addiction. The NHS defines addiction as, quote, not having control over doing, taking, or using something to the point where it could be harmful to you. This book serves as an argument, I think, of this. And so my question to the group was, how do you break an addiction that an entire culture is built around, that few actually consider harmful, and that is almost universally celebrated? And maybe it's not celebrated, but it is at least universally accepted. And I liked your response to it, which was, like anything, the contention is with any habit, whether it's establishing a new one or breaking a bad one, we do that through the framework we talk about all the time, which is awareness, intention, and action. And I think this conversation that we're having here, I hope, is just an element of bringing some awareness to this. But awareness is, and this is back to what you wrote, which, am I aware of my addiction? What triggers it? How it's harmful? What my life could look like without it? Intention, do I have a plan to deal with it? Do I have a support group? What am I going to do to remove myself from the environment and triggers that make it easier to slip? And then action, do it. There's no other way except through. And so I bring all that up because I'd love to move towards some sort of prescriptive action for ourselves, for folks out there. If we've made even the beginnings of the case for the fact that we live inside of a dopamine culture, what that means, what that looks like, beginning to make the argument for why that's not a particularly good thing, it's not a particularly healthy thing. And if we haven't yet, I think very simply we could put it as, this dopamine culture that we live in is good only for itself. It's not good for us. Right. I think about the book that Waldinger, The Good Life. I remember so much of that book being about how the culture we live in is set up for the continuation of the particular culture, but it's not set up for the success of the individual inside of that culture. And I think that that's what we're dealing with here. I think we're dealing with, whether it's technology, whether it's news, whether it's access to people's lives who we would never otherwise meet, whether it's the preponderance of packaged foods that we are not built to eat, right? All of these things, we're not built to succeed inside of the culture that we find ourselves in. And so the first step, to your point, to I think the point, right? Like, okay, let's be aware of it. And now let's be intentional about what can we do to thrive despite existing inside a culture that is not particularly set up for us to thrive. And I think that's the interesting question. I'm less interested in pointing fingers and complaining about what we are the culture that we are currently in. And I'm way more interested in thinking about, how do we individually and collectively within this community that we happen to be in take some steps to be immune to the dopamine culture to the degree that it hurts us?
Well, I think it's hard. I mean, it's like any addiction, and I really like it's about owning your attention. Like that's, if you come up with that framework and that idea, that if, what is if addiction, as you said, that definition is I forget what it was like an action, a behavior, a use of something that you don't feel like you have control over that is doing you harm. So if you are the type of person, this is the awareness that mindlessly picks up your phone and starts doing the scroll thing, that's not having control over. You're putting your attention onto this device rather than onto the world. And in terms of the detriment of that is what we say all the time. Like a big component of what we believe is a happy and healthy, fulfilled life is the attention that you pay towards the 5 factors. How are you training, eating, sleeping, thinking, and connecting? And the biggest one out of that, it's going to take away from. This is like backing up a little bit, maybe a side. When somebody says, I don't have time to train. So I was on the High Performance podcast, a really big podcast out of the UK. They have millions of listeners. And I talked to them about training and I talked about mindset. And they asked me, okay, I get all that. I get it. But I have a friend who is a single mom with 3 kids. She's super busy. How does she make the time? How does she make the time to do what you're saying? Which I was saying is like, go for a 1-mile run. And I had some, solid answer, but I thought about that a lot afterwards. And, my answer was, you make time for priority and what you prioritize. And some people don't have the time and stuff like that. What I've thought about since, because I've caught myself in this, is the answer to that question is to do what I said that I did earlier, which is my response to that would be like, do you have an Apple phone? If they say yes, I said, pull out your Apple phone and open up settings. Go to battery, click battery, scroll down till you see like time spent on certain app. And I would go, how much time in the last 7 days did you spend on Instagram? And they would say, I spent, 9 hours. It's like, do you use Instagram for your job? If the answer is yes, then we have to have another conversation. If the answer is no, then it's not a matter of time. You're not owning your attention. And this is like what we have to start with is if it's about awareness, then we create that plan, which is where you're getting to, is like, how do we do this? How do we put the constraints? How do we do that thing? But it has to start with this idea, and you have to be aware of how it's hurting. Yeah. And this is where it's hurting is, like, and the training one's the most easy and obvious. But think of what it's doing in terms of the connection. This is like very Simon Sinek-esque, but if you go out to dinner with somebody and they have their phone in their hand as you're talking to them, they don't have to ever they don't have to ever look at the phone or anything. Just the fact that it's in their hand sends you subconscious signals about your relationship with that person. Now that's just in their hand. What most of us are doing is being in the same room as people, whether it's friends getting together and having lunch or just in the small talk between events in life. And we're sitting there not owning our attention, not connecting with other people. So to your point, it's like, how do you do this? Well, I went off of Instagram for a little bit, and I'm going to tell you, it wasn't hard. It was hard for the obvious reasons of like, I want to go and check out what's going on. It's fun to do that and fuels the dopamine response in the brain. The real hard part was I was out of the loop on things that everybody else just assumed that I knew. I would come into work on Monday morning and no one does the thing that we used to do anymore. It's like, did you hear Sally and Jeffrey got engaged? Like no one does that anymore. You're just supposed to know these things. Christine's pregnant. It's like, oh my God. Like, no one does that. You're just supposed to know. And that's what I found. I was so far out of the loop. You go, okay, so what big deal? It's like, no, I couldn't. Like, I lost connection with people because they thought I was rude because I wasn't saying congratulations. And I would just like go over things, and everybody else knows when it's somebody else's birthday or anniversary or whatever it is. And it's such a part of modern day culture that it's a fast is harder than you think it is.
Yeah.
The other part is where you're saying is like, we're not built for this, is in terms of the information that we're getting, it wasn't that long ago that if something happened in Europe, it took like a month for us to know about it. Like, this is just like a couple short generations ago. If something happened across an ocean, the fastest it could get to us was by somebody riding a horse to the coast, putting that handwritten message on a ship, and that ship sailed across the United States, handed to another person on a horse that then took it to that end destination. That was the speed of which information traveled. That's what humans still are, I would assume, are still kind of like built for. I don't know how fast we adapt to that thing, but if we're not adapted to modern day nutrition, I would assume that we're not adapted to modern day information as well. Likewise, we are probably pretty good at dealing with situations that are within 800 meters of us, right? A square mile of us. And we can handle a lot of that comes at us. And the number of trauma, tragedy, drama, issues that arise within that 1 mile square radius, in terms of a week, a month, a year, a lifetime, are probably not going to overwhelm most of us. But if you get onto this device and you see how the new political candidate on the other side is going to wreck the world and what kind of devastation is happening in all of these different villages across the world, yes, like there is a lot of tragedy in the world. That doesn't necessarily mean that we are built to absorb all of it. And I think that's where a lot of this anxiety and depression can come from, because we're not navigating the worlds that we once navigated. Mm-hmm. And if we went back to that smaller circle where we have impact over, you remember the number one thing is like, understand what you control and what you don't. Understand the difference and have the courage to change the things you can and the discipline to ignore the things you can't. That's sound advice. Mm-hmm. That's the serenity prayer. And that's been a part of the addict's ethos forever. So in terms of how we break it, I'd throw it back to you, and I'm curious about your suggestions on what the steps are, because I don't think a fast is the way to do it, because you're really at a disadvantage if you still live our lives, right? Yep. If you go off in the woods and live in a tent by yourself, you're going to go and that's amazing. But I think it presents unnecessary challenge, maybe not necessary, additional challenges if you are just complete abstinence.
Right. If you go completely off the grid.
Yeah.
I think a couple of things. It's actually two things that are the same thing, which is one thing that we've talked about before in the past about, and you said it about your kids and like this idea that it's not enough for just you to be like, okay, no screens, go outside and play, because there's no kids outside playing. And so basically what you're sending them outside to do is be by themselves more, which like most kids don't want to be. And so what I think about is, I was just reading about this, a book called The Anxious Generation. I haven't read it yet, but it's by Jonathan Haidt. We've mentioned it once or twice here. We should read it and dive into it. But one of his prescriptions for what is basically the thesis of the book is giving kids, 1, cell phones, and 2, social media is doing all of this harm. So one of his prescriptions for solving that is, no cell phones before 14, or no smartphones before 14, no social media before 16. And then I'm going to blank exactly the words he used, but I believe one of them is like, it has to be collective action. It can't be individual action, because for the same reason that you talked about with your kids, like you can't take one kid's phone away and then everybody else still has phones. And suddenly, to your point, we were just talking about with, I didn't know that it was her birthday. I don't know she's pregnant. I don't know whatever. You create more problems than you're really going to solve. And so that's part of it, is that we have to figure out how to collectively, awfully hard to do, but how do we collectively start to grasp our attention back? And I think that conversations like this maybe are one way to do it, but it's a small way. But in anything like this, it's going to be small steps toward a better solution. And then I think the second thing, and it goes back to why I like this article and why I wanted to have this conversation and why I think awareness is so important, is I started thinking about why does this really matter? And yes, it matters because 9 hours on Instagram means some amount of time you can't spend going to the gym or cooking a meal or hanging out with your wife or doing any number of things. But really what I came down to is why does this matter? What are they trying to accomplish? This, and I think this is a phrase from the article, which is the dopamine cartel, which is kind of brilliant. What are they really trying to accomplish? And yes, they're trying to eat your time. Yes, they're trying to eat your attention. But why are they doing that? They're doing that because they need to direct what you want. They need to change what you want into the thing that they deliver. Because if they can make you want the thing that they deliver, then it is a tap that will never run out. And so I think about okay, so really what this is about is making the choice between, do I want to choose the things that I want, the things I want to read, the things I want to pay attention to, the people I want to spend my time with, the thoughts I want in my head? Do I want to choose what I want, or do I want to be told what I want? And for whatever reason, when I clarified that for myself, it became really clear that, okay, whatever the steps are to take, and I think there's lots of steps. Go read Digital Minimalism. I think that's probably the best prescription that I've come across by Cal Newport. Whatever the steps are that you take, whether it's a fast, a detox, whatever it is, if you don't, at the heart of it, want to do it because you want to own what you determine that you want and the actions you determine you want to take, then these drugs will probably win out because they're just so powerful. All right, my friends, we're going to keep the conversation going in just 2 minutes. But first, a quick word of thanks to a few of the sponsors that help us make this show possible. We're brought to you this time around by Bespoke Box. Are you looking to make your summer more awesome? Well, you're in luck, because Bespoke Box has just launched their all-new premium lineup of Box of Awesome collections. And trust me, they've doubled the cool gear in each box to make sure you're living your best life. To get started, head over to boxofawesome.com. Take their short quiz. It's super quick, helps them pick the right box of awesome for you. Whether you're looking to eat, drink, dress, or explore more awesomely, they've got you covered. I'm not sure awesomely is a word. I'm not going to lie to you. I apologize. We're going to go with it though. It's free to join, and they release new items every month across a ton of different categories. And when you become a member, you'll unlock amazing discounts, sometimes 30% off or more. Plus, each Box of Awesome supports small businesses, with 90% of the items coming from up and coming brands. This is actually, that's the best part of Bespoke Box. Let's talk about some of the incredible items you can find. The Terra Box features a knife made by Bare Bones, based in Salt Lake City. The Weekender Box offers a Weekender bag with metal hardware, a reinforced frame, and quality leather straps. Or how about the Forge Box? It includes a Damascus steel knife from Buck and Bear Knives, located in Pennsylvania. And for those of you who love barbecue, raise your hand. The Carnivore Box includes an American barbecue rub from the Great American Spice Company, based in Rockford, Michigan. So don't wait. Get a free mystery box with your first monthly shipment when you sign up at boxofawesome.com and you enter the code EXCELLENCE at checkout. That's boxofawesome.com. Use the code EXCELLENCE for a free mystery box with your first monthly shipment. boxofawesome.com, code EXCELLENCE. We're also brought to you this time around by Momentous. You know them, you love them. If you're looking to optimize your health and performance, you need to check out Momentous. Use the code EXCELLENCE at livemomentous.com for 20% off all your soon-to-be favorite products and supplements. We're all striving to get everything we need from our diet, but still most of us are missing out on some essential nutrients. That's why you may want to consider taking Momentous creatine, omega-3s, and protein supplements every day. I actually just ordered more protein powder from them, more creatine, and I got myself some vitamin D as well. These supplements support everything from cognitive function to reducing inflammation in muscles and joints. Navigating the supplement world can be tricky, but with Momentous, we know we're getting the best. They collaborate with top experts and are committed to using only the highest quality ingredients. Plus, their rigorous third-party testing ensures that what's on the label is exactly what's in the product, meeting the standards of even the most demanding organizations like the NFL and NBA. You don't know how big a deal that is until you realize that supplements are not strictly regulated, and studies have found that they do not always contain what they claim. So if you want to take your health to the next level with supplements made and trusted by the best, go to livemomentous.com. Use the code excellence for 20% off. That's livemomentous, momentos.com, and use the code excellence. All right, let's jump back into the show.
That framework that you started with in terms of some of those examples of slow versus modern versus dopamine. Can you just give some of those other categories to kind of round this out? Because I think it's really interesting.
Yep. Okay. So we'll go with a couple more that he's got. Journalism. Slow traditional culture is newspapers. Fast modern culture is multimedia. And dopamine culture is clickbait. Images. Slow traditional culture is view it on a gallery wall. Fast modern culture is view it on a phone. Dopamine culture is scroll on a phone. And then the last one, communications. Slow traditional culture is handwritten letters. Fast modern culture is voice, email, and memos. And dopamine culture is short text. It would be interesting to put nutrition or food in that. And this is without much forethought, but slow traditional culture being homemade
Cooking.
meal.
Home cooking.
Yeah. Fast modern culture, maybe like a restaurant, and dopamine culture is.
Yeah, it'd be like takeout.
Takeout would be fast modern culture, and then dopamine culture would be something like
the
ultra processed out of plastic. Yeah.
Yep. Something that like Doritos.
Exactly. Something you get at a gas station.
Yep.
Something you can get at a gas station.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start wrapping this up. This is a fun conversation for me. I like thinking through these things. I think it's really important, if for no other reason than to raise the awareness of where we are so that we can start to point ourselves in a direction out of it. And hopefully we've done that. Hopefully we've begun to do that. Any parting words, any parting thoughts as it relates to this conversation?
I think that the mantra that you've echoed again in this episode, which is the objective here is to own your attention.
Yep.
And when you are just scrolling, that should be a trigger for you to question what's happening.
Yep.
And if we walk away from it with that, it's kind of like when the purpose of having a drink of alcohol is to enjoy a moment of social lightness with friends. But the moment you realize you going for the cupboard at 10 in the morning by yourself, that should be a aha moment. And if we are just, if we're using social media because you want to check out that other video on how to execute a snatch better, cool. That's a reason I go on a lot. It's I try to learn things. But the moment I am scrolling and I'm just like going and I haven't seen anything for like 3 minutes and my thumb is still going up and down, that to me is like we need to pop out of it a little bit and go, whoa, what's going on here? Because as you said, why are these companies doing this? It's because they can own your attention. They are selling your attention, and they get paid by the more time you spend on their device. They have no other initiative other than that. This is the conspiracy theory if you want to, but it's just economics.
Yep,
it's just capitalism.
Totally. Yep.
It's just they are there to increase shareholder value. And the way they do that is through one way only, and it is through the money coming in through the system. And the way that they get money to come in through the system is mostly, there are other ways, but mostly through advertising dollars. They get people on there to create and send out digital ads to people, and the more people they can send that to, it's a more viable product. It's why the Super Bowl can charge millions of dollars for that, because there's more eyeballs on it. Their job is to get more eyeballs on you. They figured out that the best way to do that is not through entertainment, certainly not art. It's not even for something that you necessarily want to look at. It's something that they can get you addicted to. Mm-hmm. Just like Michael Easter, who wrote Comfort Crisis, also wrote a book called Scarcity Brain. Mm-hmm. And he starts the book off talking about how this guy made $1 gazillion by reprogramming slot machines. And he figured out how to get people addicted to them. And as opposed to just like this thing you pull, you wait for it to happen, and boom, money comes out or not. There's all these little tricks to it. And the objective is, can I get people to sit there longer? The longer people sit there, the more economic benefit we have. Yep. And that's what's happening right now to us. And I think that the purpose of this conversation is just to pull back the curtain a little bit and create a little more awareness, and if people choose to take action, create little plans for themselves, good for it. You know, one of the ways that I've tried the fast, it didn't work well. The other way to do it is to try to I really limit the number of people I follow. I think I follow 30 people total or something like that. Because it used to be like you would scroll through and it's be like, you're updated. You've seen everybody. That was actually helpful because I could close it. They figured that out. That was not helpful because people would do that. They would get updated and they would close. Yeah. So now it's not only who you follow, they intersperse all these other ones and send you off on these reels and tangents. And there is no, like they learned from Facebook, there are no links. You can't leave the platform. Facebook would say go check out this article and send you to the Wall Street Journal. It'd send you to Men's Health. And they figured out they know how to keep you on the platform for longer. So the biggest thing here is own your attention. Yep. And just kind of operate with a higher level of awareness.
Yep, agreed. The one practical takeaway that I'll leave folks with is, and I've started doing this more frequently, and when I can get myself to do it, it makes all the difference in the world. And actually, I kind of stole it from you because I saw you do this when I hung out with you, I don't know, a month or something ago. We went into your house, and the first thing you did, if not the first thing, close to the first thing, is you put your phone in a drawer. There is it is real. So I've got this little box. I go in the house. I put it in the little box. If I want to go look at something cool, I can go look at something, but I've got to go over to the box. I've got to open the box. I've got to look at the phone. Then I've got to put the phone back in the box. But man, if it's not in your pocket or on your lap when you're sitting on the couch or you're whatever, doing bath time or waiting for dinner or whatever it is, if it's not right there, you will take a breath and you will find something else to point your attention towards. But if it's in your pocket, if it's in your hand, if it's within reach, you will reach for it because it is a drug, and we are, to the degree that we are, addicted to it. And so that's my one big piece of advice is find a place in your house. When you walk into your house, the phone goes there. And if you want the phone, you go to the place. Right. The phone does not follow you around.
It's like ice cream. It's okay to have ice cream. It's okay to have ice cream. As long as you go out to get ice cream.
That's right.
Don't have it in your freezer because it's too easy. It's too good. It's too tasty. Yep. Don't have your phone on your person. Put it somewhere else. If you want to go use it, good, go use it. But
go use it.
I like that.
Yeah. And last thing is chasingexcellence.email. When we send out our weekly or our weekend email, I'll put links to a bunch of the things we talked about here, especially the article that prompted this. Definitely worth reading. Take a look at those charts. Again, I think it will do a good job of putting this idea in your head. And once it's in your head, once it's in our head, at least then we have to make a choice. Are we going to do something about it, or are we going to kind of let ourselves dive back into the dopamine and pretend that we don't know what's actually happening? Right. And so hopefully we've been able to at least make the argument for why we don't want to make that. We don't want to do that latter choice anymore. Cool.
Yeah. I've sent that article to about half dozen different people. And we've had a lot of conversations at home about how do we handle, because we have a 10 and 12-year-old.
Yeah.
So we're right in the midst of this thing. And that part of me for a long time was they're kids. We grew up with Saturday morning cartoons. They should grow up with being able to watch YouTube shorts, and they should be able to do this stuff. And that really persuaded me differently in a big, big way. Yeah.
All right. Again, chasingexcellence.email, get on the free newsletter list. We'll send out a bunch of links over the weekend. Thank you, my friend. That was fun. Thank you, everybody there, for listening. Thank you for your ratings and your reviews. If you are not subscribed wherever you happen to be listening to this, please do so you don't miss another episode. and I will be back soon. Brand new episode of Chasing Excellence.